What's up, guys, and welcome back to day 2 of the TIE Championship. This is going to be another best of 1 between MiTH, Trust, and Awake. This is going to be an elimination match. So whoever loses this goes home. Whoever wins goes to the next round. And I should know who they're playing up against since I was just staring at that picture for however long. It is going to be Mineski. But yeah, that's going to be the state of it. Sorry for the delays. Obviously, it's on land. There's nothing really much we could do about it. But we're here now. We are here on HeflaTV. I'm Mike Larson. I'm joined by Grandis V.
Yeah, to start things off, we're going to see fairly standard bans, at least between these two teams. Awake sure do love their Meepo. They're going to go ahead and first pick up the Terrorblade, and a sponsor MiTH is going to be an insta-pick, IO Tiny combination, the first two, showing their cards right off of the bat. Yesterday, we saw Awake first pick this Terrorblade, and it almost worked out for them until they went for Radiance on Terrorblade. Their early game looked really solid, and Terrorblade pretty much had the time of his life, just getting no pressure in lane, which is exactly where Terrorblade wants to be. I'm tempted to think that if they win for a more stats-heavy build on their Terrorblade in that game, they might have been able to take the win and not be in the situation that they are in now, being on the edge of elimination. They are going to follow up the Terrorblade with a Dazzle. This will allow them to more reliably get off Sunder, but other than that, I don't really see why Dazzle is going to be picked up here. I think he can wait a little bit later to pick up this hero.
Yeah, Dazzle is very rarely banned out, and I mean, you see him occasionally banned out, but it's the fringe pick at best. It does have good synergy with Terrorblade, but Tiny IO, I mean, MiTH Trust, they're not BSing around. They know exactly what they want. They want Burst, and that's what you get whenever you pick up a Tiny, and early game, Magic Burst is what you want versus Terrorblade. Later on, when you have the Cleave, you'll be able to clear Terrorblade very quickly, and then burst him down with Magic, so IO Tiny is a fantastic opening for MiTH against Terrorblade. Just having lots of magic damage is going to be great, and I expect them to pick up a lot more. Like, even Avalanche Tosses, it's hard to shield against if you're Dazzle. Like, if you are very fast, you might get a Shallow Grave off, but if you are a little bit too far away, or if you're getting surprised by a random Tiny IO, then you could very easily lose allies before you have a chance to grave them. So I don't really like IO and Tiny as a first pick generally, but up against Terrorblade, they're going to do fine.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. It's a little bit risky to only snag one of them, as then maybe you won't be able to get the Tiny. And if you pick up the Tiny first, you're definitely not getting the IOs. That would be taken out in the second ban stage. No questions asked. The next bans are going to come out with Magnus being taken up by Awake. Had they been able to snag the Magnus for themselves, it would have offered them a lot of team fight as well as a ridiculous amount of damage and cleave on the Tiny. And it's rightfully banned out here. The IO plus the Magnus, although don't have synergy directly together, they're both going to be able to put a lot of steroids onto that carry. In this case, it would have been the Tiny, although we've seen that work very well with Phantom Assassins in the past. Tidehunter also banned out, fearing a lot of teamfight presence coming out from MiTH Trust with their next couple of picks. Disruptor also being banned out, presumably to keep this IO and Tiny safe. Even though they have the Dazzle already, Disruptor would have been a nice defensive hero up against the IO Tiny. Dropping a Static Storm where they're relocating to can be disastrous. After the Viper ban, Centaur Warner is going to be where MiTH Trust take their lineup.
Alright, so MiTH Trust, just with the heroes they have right now, they're all technically strength, although I don't really know if I would consider IO a real strength hero. They're bulky. Centaur and Tiny can sit on the front lines, and versus Terrorblade, you really want to have lots of bulky heroes, you want to have lots of armor, and you want to have lots of burst, and that's exactly what Centaur brings to the table. If you get a double edge onto a Terrorblade, then he is going to be dropped like a rock. Skywrath Mage is actually still in the pool, and if Awake don't pick that one up, then MiTH Trust are going to be so elated in order to slam that pick. I mean, if you silence and then double edge, Terrorblade is just going to crumble. And Awake, they actually decide to go for a Templar Assassin, perhaps going to go for a minor minus armor sub-theme here, but they're very reliant on physical damage right now, and if MiTH Trust pick up any armor, then suddenly Awake aren't going to be doing much damage.
Yeah, usually I don't like suggesting it, but I think this game, Centaur might consider going for the Crimson Guard over the likes of a Pipe. Centaur usually wants to go for the Pipe to negate that double-edge damage, but honestly, the damage block for the heroes would be very useful, as they're dealing with a decent amount of sources of that damage. My goodness, that was the word. As well as the plus armor from that extra aura would be nice. Presumably somebody else would get the mechanism. Right now, Awake are very focused on the burst damage coming in from the heroes, and I'm not a huge fan of this Templar Assassin. The physical damage is going to be very threatening, but right now, MiTH, it seems that they just have a lot more control. The Tiny and the IO are both very low armor heroes to start out, and they are not going to be going for a sub-theme of minus armor. This is going to be the main focal point of the draft coming up from Awake, now picking up the Vengeful Spirit.
Yeah, Vengeful Spirit is going to fit right in with their minus armor theme, and it's also a very good hero against Batrider, so they get a super value pick there. I mean, Swap is probably the best tool in the game at dealing with Batrider, and if you're not lassoing the VS, then you're going to get that lasso snapped. That being said, MiTH Trust are going to get some pretty decent initiation, and that's initiation that Awake are most likely not going to have. Templar Assassins, as of late, prefer not to go for Blink Daggers. Terrorblade generally wants to just be very passive, and Dazzle Vengeful Spirit, they're not going to be starting any fights in a big way, so the initiation is mostly going to be in the hands of MiTH, and as long as they could build their armor and sustain all this physical damage out from Awake, then they should be fine. Awake, really, what they want to do is just play super passively. Get this Terrorblade farm, try to control the game a little bit with TA, but I honestly don't know if that's possible. MiTH Trust, they have so many ways of locking heroes down that Awake are going to really struggle to get anything going on early.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I would have loved to see a Timbersaw this game up against MiTH's lineup, as they're just naturally very squishy. But right now, with the current state of how things are going for Wake, I don't think that would be a wise choice. They need a way to control the fights effectively with very little farm. And right now, the heroes aren't available in the pool in order to do so. Puck's available, and they might have to settle for that hero.
Yeah, it really depends, I suppose. But for MiTH, though, I mean, they have Tiny Centaur, Batrider. I still think Skarath Mage is going to be the best pick here, like, even though he's facing up against a lot of minus armor for Awake. I think they would, I mean, they would like a lot of control, obviously, but they really want physical damage. I mean, that's what they're all about. They really don't have much magic going for them at all, so another core who's very reliant on physical, I don't really know. It's going to be a Lich ultimately for MiTH, and I love this pick, actually. Like, usually Lich is just mediocre. He's pretty good, but Ice Armor is going to be instrumental this game.
It definitely is. It's going to offer them a decent amount of nuke damage as well for the Centaur, but yeah, I think this pick is mostly there for the Ice Armor. Currently, all of MiTH Trust's armor is more or less going to be plus armor. Assault Cuirass from the Tiny eventually is going to come out. I'd love to see if Vlad's on one of these supports. Tranquil Boots presumably for the Centaur Warner, as well as the Lich, heck, maybe even the Batrider this game. That would be a solid choice. MiTH Trust, they seem decently prepared to deal with the minus armor coming out for Awake. They're still going to be pumping out a lot of damage. The minus armor, if you add all of the sources together, that's 6 coming out from Wave of Terror, another 6 being taken out by Meld, actually 8 taken out by Meld, and then Dazzle taking out a ridiculous chunk of armor if he's able to get off that ultimate for a decent amount of time. Still, MiTH are going to be working with about 0, give or take a few armor points at the earlier portions of the mid-game, and they still should be looking pretty healthy. Elder Titan, the last pick for Wake. I really don't like this hero, actually. Tiny's base armor is very low, as is Io's, Lich, Batrider, and Centaur. They don't, I don't know, get very much base armor. It's all from the extra items that they're going to be picking up. So the Elder Titan, despite in theory being a really huge source of minus damage, isn't going to be getting as much traction as maybe you'd like him to. Still, it's going to be ridiculous, because now you're going to have all of that minus armor being directly applied to heroes. It's nice synergy, but I would have liked to see more control coming out from this offlane pick.
Yeah, I think I'm on the same boat. I mean, I love the flavor of Awake. I love the theme of their draft. Like, if I was judging purely on how flavorful the draft is, Awake would take this 10 out of 10, but unfortunately that's not how Dota works. The Elder Titan might even be armor overkill, and he's going to not have a great amount of value, as you already described. But we'll see if this huge minus armor strategy works out for Awake. I love it when teams go for weird stuff like this, and well, both sides are going to be loading up into their lanes. Let's see who's going to be playing on MiTH. We got SD playing his IO along with Lakel's on Tiny. Over towards the mid lane, it's going to be a mystery on Batrider. Sure, that happened. I don't know. My pro is going to be on Centaur Warrior, currently up top, and Nokimon is going to be supporting as the Lich.
Currently on the Wake side, we are going to have their trialing being made of the Terrorblade, played by Bungsel Roti on the Terrorblade. King A going to be playing on the Dazzle. The next support's going to be Vengeful Spirit on YO2. The mid lane hero is going to be Templar Assassin, handled by Toy, leaving the offlaner to be Elder Titan, handled by Solotic.
Alright, so for Awake, what they want to do is just get a couple of levels up. They can't really do much in the early stages, as Vengeful Spirit and Dazzle are fairly mediocre roamers, mediocre to bad, especially when paired together. So they're not going to be able to pressure MiTH Trust a whole lot as far as roaming is concerned, even though there is an IO in the field, and that's generally what you want to do. They need their levels. Once they get to level 9-ish, that's going to be when Awake are going to be heavily roaming the map, with everyone with the exception of Terrorblade, who mostly just wants to farm. And at that point, we're going to see if MiTH are going to have enough sustain and enough survivability in order to counter all this minus armor.
Hold your thought. Terrorblade is currently chilling out in the jungle and eating away some trees. Is this going to be a farming venge? Oh, I don't think so. Why did he actually do that? That seems to be wasted time by the Terrorblade.
I mean, you have a Quelling Blade. You might as well chop trees. Otherwise, it's just
Is he
unclean.
jungling, though? Like, this could be a jungle Terrorblade.
Please, no. I mean, I like the flavor of Awake's draft, but when you have a jungling Terrorblade, you're not going to win the game. Like, I'm sorry. It's just such a terrible way to go because there's no reason to do this. Just put him in lane. It's just so much better.
I don't know. He's really committing to these trees. It looks like a cliff jungling Terrorblade to me. Metamorphosis level 1. He's doing it. Oh my goodness. This game just got all flavors of wrong. Okay. The other lanes, we're going to have a Batrider playing in mid versus Templar Assassin. Templar Assassin should have a decent time in this lane, although, yeah, nobody should be getting kills on either side. If Templar Assassin gets a stick, she'll be doing fine. It's an offlane Lich coming out from MiTH, which is a little bit peculiar. But their other lane, it's just going to be the Tiny as well as the Io in bottom, leaving last but not least the Centaur. Oh no, it's the Centaur Lich offlane. Okay, that makes a whole lot more sense. My goodness, I completely glanced over my pro. I'd love to just watch how this Terrorblade jungles and how it's, or if it's going to be effective, but honestly, this early game is going to be so passive. Lich just going to be taking out creeps in the top lane, very low kill potential on or with the Centaur, and bottom lane, Elder Titan's not going to be able to do anything about the Tiny, but then again, the Aya is not going to be bothering the Elder Titan that much. This is going to rely very heavily on people making slip-ups for this first blood. I don't see any aggressive roaming potential until we see higher levels or a Blink Dagger on the Batrider.
Yeah, I think I'm in the same boat, and, you know, actually, thinking about the jungling Terrorblade a little bit more, it's obviously not the fastest hero to jungle. He has the Quelling Blade and quite a bit of base damage, so he's going to be able to do so. But I think it's only going to work because MiTH, they have super passive supports. I mean, Lich and Io, they're not going to be roaming around. Like, they're not going to be able to stop a Terrorblade. Awake are going to be able to farm, at the very least, a little bit on this Terrorblade without being punished. I think they could be getting a little bit more if they just had him in lane and maybe had the Dazzle doing the pulling or the Vengeful Spirit doing the pulling or something like that. But hell, if you get an unpunished jungle, it doesn't really matter who it is because that's another source of income that you're working with. So all things considered, as weird as it is, as unorthodox as it is, I think it's not terrible, this game.
I don't know. I'm still super on the fence about it. I think that they'd be able to get more out of this lane just by having the Terrorblade in lane. He's CSing decently, but most of these are small medium creeps or small creeps that he's not really able to abuse, and he has no way to sustain either his health nor his mana. Terrorblade, this game is just going to have such a hard time.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's good. I'm saying I could understand where Awake are coming from. And,
if you're going to do this, I don't see why not pick like a Lifestealer or something. Maybe even a Nature's Prophet. It would just benefit a lot more from this jungle farm. It would be faster, and I don't know. I just don't see this actually working. Terrorblade now with another Metamorphosis is able to resume his cliff jungling. If anybody as much as shows their face, the Lich or the Centaur, he's going to die.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Lich could just walk over here and... What level is Lich? Like level 2? Yeah, I'm pretty sure level 2 Lich can do this.
Yeah,
It'll
that's
be
enough.
Tough, but he can.
As long as he has Frostblast, I think he's A-okay.
Well, let's see if MiTH are actually going to catch on to this, because they clearly know that there's no Terrorblade on the map right now, so they should know that something is going on. Obviously, jungle Terrorblade isn't the first thing that crosses your mind, but at a certain point, you're like, okay, they're missing a hero. We should probably do something about this. Mid-Toy is in quite a bit of trouble, actually. 3 stacks of Napalm. I think this might be the first blood. The Mystery Batrider is going to get 4 and then push him back down to the low ground, actually. The fraction's now up, and the damage onto question marks, not going to be able to kill him off. He lives at double digits of HP.
Batrider, there is that potential if the Templar Assassin oversteps their bounds to get that kill. I wasn't expecting the Templar Assassin to die, but it is one of those matchups where Batrider can feasibly get that kill, and it's going to be MiTH coming out way ahead in this early game. Their Tiny is getting a lot of farm down in bottom, pretty much unobstructed farm, despite the Terrorblade getting what looks to be similar farm to the Tiny. It's not so, as those creeps are a lot less valuable. It's actually going to be a farming Dazzle in the tri-lane, or defensive dual lane coming out from Awake. We haven't talked about this hero at all. And honestly, I have no idea why you'd give the Dazzle the farm over the Vengeful Spirit. It just seems that Venge would scale a lot better with the farm than the Dazzle, but I suppose if you're going to be going for a mech on either of them, it doesn't really matter who's picking it up. And the Vengeful Spirit will have mana issues if she does go for that mechanism, so I suppose the Dazzle is the better hero to go for it. Still, I'm baffled by this laning choice of Awake.
Dazzle is a hero that does need levels. Like, as far as supports go, the higher level your Dazzle is, generally the happier you're going to be. That being said, a Vengeful Spirit with farm is just going to contribute so much more, even though Dazzle with levels is going to be useful. So, I agree with you. I mean, Dazzle getting core amounts of farm is not really going to swing the game for Awake. I mean, what is he going to do? Heal people with Shadow Wave a little bit harder? That's not really going to be a game-winning move for Awake. It's essentially them kind of sacrificing this lane, because even though Dazzle is getting a little bit here and there, they're not actually pressuring the Centaur that much. He's level 5. He's just fine. Now they're going to go for Toy. It's going to be Templar Assassin once again in quite a bit of trouble, but the Bat Rider, he's not that healthy, and he knows that Toy is able to put out some serious damage, so he's not going to go for that one yet. But Centaur, you know, he's not farming the best, but levels on Centaur means that he could go for kills, and Dazzle, or now the new Terrorblade in lane, they are fairly vulnerable to a Stampede, Hoofstomp, double-edge kill.
Yeah, the Terrorblade is going to be farming in the safe lane now. I don't get why they didn't do this from the start. It's going to benefit the Dazzle more than anything, now level 5 on that hero. Although he's not going to put the CS he got to good use, a level 5 Dazzle is nice in theory, but then again, you're sacrificing Terrorblade levels as well as farm in order to do so. I'm inclined to say not worth. The Tiny down to bottom is dropping pretty darn low, as it looks like he just tanked one too many punches from the Elder Titan after the Astral Spirit. Yeah, the Elder Titan's getting his levels as well, so eventually Awake are going to come online, but at the same time, so are MiTH. We're waiting for the Blink Dagger on the Bat Rider, and that's going to come sooner rather than later with almost 1,700 gold pulled up in the Bat Rider's inventory. He's going to have this Blink at a good click, probably 9-10 minutes or thereabouts, and once they have that Blink Dagger, Terrorblade is going to die if he gets lassoed at all. With only 606 HP at this point in the game, Terrorblade is absolutely wet paper. Another couple of levels aren't going to change that with his abysmal stat gain, and even if he does get drums, it's not going to change anything. Lasso into the Stomp Double Edge will secure his demise 90% of the time.
Yeah, so they're going to actually go for the bottom lane. Slodic going to take an Avalanche Toss, and he's going to go down. The Avalanche Toss combo wasn't exactly there, but both skills landed, and that's going to be a kill for Lakel's. Most crucially, a little bit more experience for the Io. By the time the Bat Rider gets his Blink Dagger, the Io should be close to a relocate, and then things are going to get really scary for Awake. They do have a Shallow Grave, which is always going to be useful at keeping your allies alive, but there's just so much lockdown and so much burst potential for MiTH that at the drop of the hat, they could get kills, and Bat Rider's now backed off from the mid lane. He's going to clear off a 1-2-3 stack. Unfortunately, he's going to miss this final one, but still, this is going to be Blink Dagger money. I think it should be just enough.
Yeah, especially if he's able to get these Centaurs at the same time. It gives Lich a little bit of room in mid, and he's going to continuously deny away from the Templar Assassin, who has very little to nothing at this point in the game. Halfway towards her phase boots is negligible farm on Toy. Not going to be able to do very much with it. After backing off for the Magic Wand, this is why she's so far behind, as well as after giving up the kill to the Bat Rider's solo. Bat Rider now with a 7-minute Blink Dagger, smoke purchased up by the Lich. MiTH are looking to turn on the heat now, and this might be a little bit faster than Awake are anticipating.
Yeah, and even if they do go super aggressive, the Tiny still has his hand of Midas. Tiny is a hero that could do a lot early, but he can also do a lot late, especially if you're guaranteeing your farm with that Midas. So with the Bat Rider now going to go for the mid lane, it's going to be the first shiny usage of that Blink Dagger, and Toy is going to feel that very shortly. Stampeded back into the tower, Flame broken back into the tower as well. TP attempt, I guess it's a nice idea. No disables there, but the damage is going to be more than enough, and of all heroes, Io is going to draw that kill, but the Blink Dagger is no longer a surprise for MiTH, but hey, you got to kill the enemy Templar Assassin. You cannot be more happy about that.
Yeah, every time the Lasso as well as the Stampede are up, Awake need to be so careful. It's a synergy that I love seeing, is that Centaur and Bat Rider on the same team. You can pull enemy heroes under your towers so easily, even if they feel they're comfortably farming. I like the Midas choice for Lakel's. He's able to get it at a very fast timing, and attack speed scales on Tiny a lot better than other carries, and he needs the levels desperately, and when he's in a dual lane, especially in bottom, he's not going to be getting as many levels as maybe he'd like to. This is going to max out the Avalanche Toss very quickly, as well as propel him in farm. I think it's a solid choice.
So Awake, they have their hands full pretty much with the Bat Rider. They're soon to have their hands full with the Blinking Centaur as well. I don't know if they could actually mobilize on this Tiny and bring him down. Like, the Elder Spirit chip harassment with this Spirit is certainly very annoying for Lakel's, but, you know, rotating a Templar Assassin down here is definitely not enough to actually get a kill. So Lakel's is going to be running around with quite a bit of farm, and Awake aren't actually going to respond to that just because they have so many other heroes on their plate right now. This is getting pretty dangerous for Awake, and it's only 9 minutes into the game. Like, Terrorblade, he's farming pretty decently, going back into the jungle. I don't know, I guess he really likes it there, but Terrorblade, he's getting some decent farm, but I don't know. I would just be more scary about a Tiny. I'd be more scary about this imminent Blink Centaur if I was awake, and I would not be happy with the fact that Terrorblade is getting a little bit of farm because there are so many threats on the map.
Yeah, it's not a happy place for Wake. Also, Templar Assassin looks for Roam down in bottom, and she's forced to TP back towards mid, and she can't find anything on the Tiny. It's a Templar Assassin that's, I don't know, it feels like Toy is kind of thrown for a loop as to what to do in this game. He can't really control the pace of the game, and a Templar Assassin that's being controlled by the enemy team, or at least their decisions, is not a very happy Templar Assassin. The Blink Dagger for the Centaur isn't going to be coming super fast online for MiTH, but it's still going to be at a decent timing. It looks like he is going to forgo going for those Tranquil Boots, at least for now, in order to get that faster. If they get a Blink Initiation on anybody on the side of Wake, they're probably going to fall, and Bunch Cell he's going to be forced to stay at these jungle camps. Like, this is the only safe spot on the map, and honestly, it's not that safe. A smoke coming out from the Batrider, he could easily solo kill that Terrorblade.
Speaking of smoke, we have 3 heroes from Awake looking towards bottom lane, but it seems like SD and Lakels, they smell this one coming from a mile away. They're going to be hugging their tower, and this is, you don't randomly hug towers like this. They know that something is up. The question is, are Awake going to dive this one? It seems like the answer is no, and it should be no. Even though Awake are getting a very, very awful start right now in this game, they do have a lot of minus armor. When you have minus armor, you could go for fast Roshans. It's not going to completely bring them back into this game, but it will certainly be a useful tool for them. As now we see MyPro and the Mystery Batrider, they're going to be smoked up, and they both have Blink Daggers. Whoever they find, if they find anyone at all, that's a guaranteed kill.
They're looking for the Terrorblade. Currently, it is going to be the Terrorblade going towards the Ancients, maybe. You can't really farm these very effectively without Metamorphosis, but he does cut away one tree, and he'll be able to do the same cliff jungling thing he was doing early. So either a conscious decision from the Terrorblade to keep himself safe or not, it is going to save his life, but the Dazzle is not going to be so lucky, as he's going to be chain frosted and everything. The Shallow Grave's going to come out and save him for a little bit. There is going to be a stomp of the backlines coming out from the Elder Titan, but now he's spotted by the Batrider, pulled in. He is just going to be in range for the Tiny to wail on him. His solo tick is going to be brought down eventually. No, one more auto attack. The toss is going to secure a double kill for Lakels. Everybody on the side of MiTH is very low, and I think they're going to be able to make it out alive with the blinks. Still, it's MiTH finding just ways to outmaneuver Awake. The Blink Dagger is coming in key. It's not the cleanest of engagements for MiTH, but it's clean enough. The Tiny is now going to be a lot closer towards this Aghanim Scepter. He's already holding onto the point booster, as well as enough money to get one of the components. This is scary coming out from MiTH.
MiTH take a lot of damage, but they don't die, and that's really the crucial fact to take away from that. Awake, they very quickly were outnumbered, and there were 2 things that were going on there. First, that was the first relocation from SD, so that was obviously a surprise, and that was also the first usage of Centaur's Blink Dagger, so they were doubly surprised, and they got completely demolished because of it. I honestly don't know if the intelligence would have helped them if they knew that the relocate and Blink Dagger were online, because they were just so decisively killed off, but either way, it's MiTH taking a fantastic lead in this game, and when you are sitting at this sort of lead with a Tiny who is farming very happily, you are going to be in for a pretty good position. Granted, the only thing MiTH are really lacking right now is pressure on this Terrorblade. Like, he has been farming, although he has been farming slowly, he is still getting no pressure. So I think that's the only thing that MiTH could really be doing better. And even if they don't do it, it's not really a terribly huge deal because they're just farming so much better.
Yeah, I think that's the case. Right now, Awake are already forced into trying to take it to the late game to get this Terrorblade items. And it's never really a thing you want to do up against a Tiny. Even if they have the theoretical late game advantage with the Templar Assassin and Terrorblade that have farmed, they can't really find initiations. And even if they could, a Tiny can still backdoor your base very easily when he's 6-slotted. Lakels is only, give or take, 1,000 gold away from getting the Aghanim Scepter after going for the Midas. This is just a very fragile situation for Awake. They haven't lost any Tier 1 towers yet, which to me is pretty surprising. Although this pushing power from MiTH isn't that great, I would have thought that they'd take one by now. It's going to keep Awake in this game for now, but MiTH are still comfortable farming up in this Tiny until they have the Aghanim Scepter +1 item. Once they do, I just see these towers from Awake falling left and right.
Yeah, the Centaur does have his Blink Dagger, and the Batrider does as well, so I think it's about time for MiTH to turn up the heat once again. And oh, they smoke up mid, and they see King A, but they're going to decide not to go for him. Smoking into the enemy jungle is going to be a little bit complicated because Terrorblade has many illusions running around, so getting the right initiation is going to be difficult. If they do get their smoke pop, they do. I expect Firefly to be used, and they're going to catch him, but which one's real? Oh, there's the real one. Catch him in the net. There you go. Frost Blast is going to be used. Stampede is there as well. No Sunder opportunity. SD is going to come in along with Lakel's, but Lakel's is going to be left behind, stunned up and brought down. Now SD, he's just got to wait for a little while longer to get back to safety, although there he is. He's going to go right back to the bottom lane. Awake make a 1-for-1 trade, and when you're this far behind, you take any trade you can get, and getting a kill on the enemy Tiny is the best hero you can kill off. So
yeah,
even though they do lose their Terrorblade rather, it's pretty good for Awake.
Yeah, it's going to be a net experience swing going the way of Awake, 1,000 experience there, and 500 gold also going to their pockets. Losing a Terrorblade is the worst hero to lose, but then again, I'm not sure what Lakel's was actually planning to do there. The Wisp relocated him in. I think he would have been better spent just down in bottom lane. They commit the Lich ultimate to it as well, just to make sure no Sunder comes out from the Terrorblade, and honestly, those two heroes could have secured the kill by themselves.
Alright, so Tiny is going to back off for a little while until they have the Blink Daggers up once again and their cooldowns. They're going to just be farming and then waiting for their ultimates, and then once they're up, farming, then killing, then farming, then killing. And Awake, they're pretty much just farming. Again, they can go for a Roshan that will be pretty fast. They do have maxed out meld. Only 1 point in the Vengeful Spirit Howl, though, or Wave, so it's not going to be the most minus armor, but that's something that Awake should be keeping in mind, the fact that they can so very easily pick up this Roshan, and when you're 6 kills down, taking any objective is going to be of utmost importance. However, I don't really know if they're going to get the space or time to do it. Even though they can go for a fast Roshan, they are up against a Bat Rider, who is king of the Rosh Pit.
Definitely. Right now, Batrider is going to be looking potentially for initiation. He is going to spot out the poor Vengeful Spirit. The relocates on the backlines, however, and Tiny's pretty far away from this. It doesn't matter. Vengeful Spirit's going to die before this even happens. The toss is going to land onto the Templar Assassin as well as Dazzle. Both of those will survive as there's no further lockdown for this. But still, it's going to be a pretty clean kill going the way of MiTH, and then the Tiny and Io are going to be back to farming inches away from where they were.
Yeah, that was the relocate that only brought them like 1,000 range at most. But I guess that just shows how powerful Stampede is with the Bat Rider. Even their own teammates don't know how much that initiation is going to work, and it brought them pretty much in arm's length. So it was a pretty clean kill for MiTH, as they do use the Stampede, do use the lasso. Getting a kill is going to be pretty much worth it, as Tiny is completed his Aghanims. Come on, Courier. Not quite yet. Oh no,
yep, there
he
it
has
is.
completed. There it is. So Aghanim Scepter completed by Tiny, 17 minutes into the game, and he's just going to get more and more terrifying. Whereas conversely, we have Terrorblade. He hasn't made any advancements. He's picking up the Yasha, but he has had that one for quite a long time, actually.
Yeah, and a naked Yasha on a Terrorblade really isn't all that scary. He's still pumping out a pretty decent amount of damage when he's Metamorphosis, but it's still less than a Tiny's damage, especially when you factor in Overcharge as well as the Cleave coming through. It's nice, but I think the biggest difference is that the Terrorblade's going to die almost instantly to the nukes coming out from MiTH. Hoof Stomp Double Edge is going to take out upwards of 400 HP straight off of the Terrorblade, and that's almost half of his HP gone right off the bat.
Yeah, and that's a really scary thought for Awake. The Dazzle can only do so much in order to give his team sustain, and again, he's mostly sustained versus physical with Weave, so things are getting more and more scary for Awake, and we'll see if eventually they could try to take this to the late game. If they had a Hand of Midas on the TA, or, oh, hold that thought, because Slog is going to get hit with a Chain Frost. I don't know if that was worth it, but they certainly got him. Elder Titan down. If they had a Hand of Midas, I would say Awake would be in a much better position. You know, being 8 kills down is never good, but if you have a Hand of Midas TA or a Hand of Midas Terrorblade, then you could make this game a very long one and come out on top most of the time, but that's not the case. They're built for fighting right now, and they're not fighting right now, so all these cost-effective items that they're getting, they're not actually impactful.
Yeah. Usually, I'm not one to like going for the Midas on the Templar Assassin, but this game, I think it suits the way that Awake are playing. They can't honestly fight into MiTH, and so in that sense, it might just be a game-losing item, but honestly, I don't think there's a way that they can win this immediately. They need to just wait out until the late game. They're looking for a stack of Ancients that the Templar Assassin is going to attempt to farm, although this is going to be very difficult. They'll probably have to commit a Metamorphosis to this. Maybe not. The damage coming up from the Templar Assassin Sideblades is doing a decent amount. Now with Terrorblade with a couple of illusions. It's going to kill this stack, although it's going to be very long. There's your Metamorphosis.
And fortunately for them, the Centaur and Bat Rider are both up on the top lane, where currently 0 heroes are Awake, are even on that half of the map. So MyPro and the Mystery Bat are going to be, unfortunately, unable to find anyone. This is like the first smoke that they've used that is not going to yield anything. And Awake, they've gotten quite a bit of golden experience from this ancient stack. Suddenly Terrorblade's up to 3,000 gold. I don't know if he's going to be going for a relic, but if he does, that represents a potential comeback. No, he's just going to buy an ultimate orb, I believe, and he has actually completed Manta style, so he has got an item, but MyPro as well as Batrider, they're going to find a poor TA. They're going to relocate on him as well. This TA doesn't stand a chance in hell. He's going to go down. Here comes King A and Yo 2, but I don't know if they can do anything either. The minus armor plus the stuns onto the Batrider are going to drop him below half, but he will survive. Now the Echo Stomp from the Elder Titan will miss onto everyone. It looks like that's just going to be a clean kill and a disengage for MiTH. Once again, the initiation power of the Batrider and Centaur shining through as they ultimately do get a smoked kill.
Yeah, Terrorblade is farming well, currently below the Tiny's farm rate, which is kind of to be expected, but I don't know, he's getting more out of this than I thought he would. I suppose he hasn't been pressured that hard, only dying once, but then again, a Manta only on Terrorblade isn't going to carry this game up against the Tiny, and they're just losing too much map control for it. If they're able to transition this into the Tier 1 towers and Tier 2 towers of MiTH, maybe it'll be worth it for Awake, but getting the Tier 1 tower in mid denied is not a great way to start, as that's gold that Awake desperately need to get back into this game.
Yeah, and, you know, the Terrorblade just picked up his Manta style. Lakel's is right behind him. He has the Yasha completed, another 1,200 gold in the bank, so he's very close to a Manta style of his own. And given the choice, I'd rather have a Tiny with Manta style on my team than a Terrorblade with Manta, as the Tiny illusions are guaranteed to hit hard pretty much all of the time, whereas Terrorblade, sometimes they hit hard with Metamorphosis. Most of the time, though, it's not going to be the case. So Lakel's getting an absurd amount of farm, and the IO right behind him has been actually unpressured as well. 206 is a surprising score for any IOs. Usually they're the first ones to die, but he's been surviving, and that's going to be a faster, more secure mech for MiTH that is going to... Is it not on Awake? No, they do have a mech from on Elder Titan already, so they have a mech advantage, but clearly it's not doing much for them.
Yeah, the 250 burst steal, it's a nice item to have on your team, but it's not going to completely tip the tides of the team fights, especially not when you have SD getting his mechanism only a couple hundred gold, or just 150 gold away from having that done in his inventory. Currently, it's Tiny and Io partnered up in top, allowing Tiny to farm out this lane. There's very little that Awake can do to kill this Tiny. Worst case scenario for them, they'll have to relocate out the Tiny with SD, using the relocate to get him back to the base, and then give up the Tiny, or the Io's life to save the Tiny, which is a pretty decent trade if you're able to secure a lot of farm for Lakel's, and they're able to do that now. A toss combo as well as a couple of smacks with the tree is going to secure the end of that creep wave. Instead of opting for the Manta style, it's going to be Lakel's going towards the Assault Cuirass as his next item. I like this item progression coming out from the Tiny. The Yasha in and of itself is a really nice item to have, just for the extra movement speed as well as for the attack speed and armor. It's already pretty solid, and then going for the Assault Cuirass I think is a necessity this game, but he's going to have both soon enough anyway. 1,300 net worth as we're going to see initiation. They find themselves a Toy, and Toy is going to be dead. They relocate on him top, and it's not even necessary. SD doesn't even bother bringing the Tiny with him.
Hey, you got to get them levels on Io. He's going to collect a little bit of experience from that one, as it's once again going to be the Templar Assassin caught with her pants down, and she's going to be very quickly brought down. In the meantime, Tiny has been pushing up top lane. He took down the Tier 2 tower before that kill even happened, and that's just more and more map control going the way of MiTH that Awake are not going to be able to reverse. I mean, the bottom lane is pretty much healthy, perfectly healthy. The top lane banged up a little bit for Awake, but they're not going to be able to push out and take that tower convincingly. They have to worry about this mid lane. Look at Lakel's just chunked down this tower. This is a disgusting amount of damage from Tiny this early on, and he's actually pretty tanky as well. 1,800 HP on him with the ice armor only being level 1. Lakel's is only going to get more tanky, especially since he is going to go for that Assault Cuirass. So Awake, their minus armor strategy generally at this point is going to be extremely strong, because in fights you're just going to be hitting so very hard all of the time, but they're not actually taking fights. They're just constantly losing heroes without any sort of resistance.
And the map control situation for Awake isn't going to get any better. We have a Batrider that's running around with a gem. They were able to use that to deward a couple of TA traps, which usually give you quite a lot of vision. Awake currently have a couple still out on the map, but no proper wards are available for them, and it's just not a good situation to be in. Nowhere is safe for them to farm, and a Terrorblade that isn't safe to farm is not a happy Terrorblade. He's going to be going for a BKB, presumably with that Ogre Club as his next item, and once Terrorblade has that, maybe he'll be able to take some fights, but honestly I'm not so sure, as a Tiny with this amount of cleave is going to be able to destroy the Illusion Army from the Terrorblade, which is really where he's going to be getting the bulk of his damage inside the team fights. Right now it's a group up coming up from Awake to secure another Ancient stack for the Terrorblade, although this one is only a double.
Yeah, I think you make a good point with those Sonic Traps as Awake. They've lost a great deal of their map control. They have an Observer Ward near the Roshan pit, but if you look at the Observer Wards for MiTH, they have one lane ward on the bottom lane, a kind of lane-ish ward on the mid, and up top they also have an Observer. The map control and the map vision of MiTH is pretty much everywhere. They know exactly where Awake are going pretty much all the time, and when you have a tiny Wisp on your team, map vision is going to be so crucial. If you find one poor support walking alone, suddenly relocate, it turns into a free kill, so Awake, they have to get something going, and I don't know if they actually can. Like, the Batrider has his lasso up, he's working with the gem, and that's why Awake are losing all of this map vision, but what could they do? They're going to go for Lakel's, and this is a great way to start. Lakel's going to be converged upon by all 5 heroes. Do they have enough to bring him down? Can they even catch up to him? They're going to drum and try to chase this Tiny down. The Stampede is there, and Lakel's is suddenly running really fast. All 5 heroes invested up onto the top lane, and they don't get a damn thing. In the meantime, bottom lane is being pushed. This is actually something that MiTH might want to turn around on, because they do have a Batrider in the area.
Yeah, it's not a fight that they convincingly lose, and even if they do leak a couple of heroes to center or the Wisp, they'll put a lot of pressure on the map, but they don't even have to do that. The entirety of Awake's lineup is bottled up on their side of the, I don't know, of the world, rather, and they can't really leave that line, and I don't know, even when they do, it's so scary to come outside of your base. They have complete vision over this Templar Assassin as she's farming, and they also have vision of the 2 supports, or actually they don't. They're smoked up, but the Templar Assassin farming this aggressively, I think they know something's up, and they are going to go for a D-ward.
Yeah, so MiTH, they're not going to take any unnecessary risks. It's going to be Batrider to open up pretty much every single fight. There's no need to relocate in when you don't have a Batrider available to start that fight. Unnecessary risks that MiTH Trust are going to not be taking, and I think they could probably get away with it, but making the responsible decision not to. It is going to be a Crimson Guard for the Centaur, as you mentioned before, prioritizing that over the pipe, as Awake are going to be mostly physical damage based. They already have the Assault Cuirass. It's a matter of time before they pick up a Vlad's. I don't believe one is up just yet. No, they don't have a Vlad's, but I'm sure that will be the next pickup. And then at that point, Awake, though they still will have a lot of minus armor, it's not going to be doing as much as it would have been doing if they were fighting, you know, at 15 minutes to 20 minutes into this game.
Yeah. I hope that's what Lich is going to purchase next. Currently sending out a TP scroll for himself. He's sitting on 1,200 gold. I think that's like a no-brainer for the Lich. That's going to be 5 extra armor coming out from the Vladimir's as well as the Assault Cuirass, adding up to 10. We're going to have Mech as well as Crimson Guard, adding an extra 2, 14. And then we have 8 coming out from the Lich armor. Or no, 5 right now, eventually to be 9. My goodness, mixing that up with the Ogre Frost Mage armor. Right now, we're going to see a smoke coming out from MiTH with the double Blink Dagger initiation, as well as an IO Tiny that can jump in any moment. Looks like Terrorblade is absolutely screwed. Going to be Lasso, Hoof Stomp, Layer, Lich Chain Frost as well. He'll be able to get the Sunder off, however. Let's see if he's going to be close enough. He's going to burn the Fire and the Flames, gets the Sunder off on the Lich, but the mechanism is going to keep him healthy. BKB on the Terrorblade, trying to man-fight to get some kills. That's not a fight you can win, although Lakel's is taking a surprising amount of damage, and actually will fall. The Terrorblade's going to survive, and now man-fighting against MyPro. The Crimson Guard isn't going to save him. And it's going to be a 2-for-2 trade, which is honestly more than I would have thought Awake would be able to get. That Grave on the Terrorblade is absolutely huge, and now chasing down the Lich as well as the Batrider. Flamebreak going to help the TA, and now it looks like they're going to try to obliterate this Lich. Force Staff is going to keep him arm's length, but Templar Assassin, one of the kings of continuously going for those chases. The BKBs on the major right-clicking course for Awake coming crucially there. Usually, it's not that huge to get a 2-for-2 trade, but when you're behind, especially when you're trading an offlaner and a support for an offlaner and their hard carry, it's a huge win for Awake. Yeah.
So I think MVP of that fight got to be Dazzle. Not only did he get that Shallow Grave off, which was huge, obviously, he got the Weave off, and that was even bigger, because Tiny was working up against the Terrorblade, who had, like, 40-ish armor. That's an insane amount of durability from physical damage, and Tiny, though he is doing a lot, he's not going to be doing that much when you're hitting someone with that much armor. So the armor swing from Awake certainly shining there, and I mean, that fight just went so well for them. Imagine what this game would be like if they were taking those types of fights 15 minutes ago. It could have been the same exact thing, except Awake holding a substantial lead, as the Tiny is going to be a little bit more respectful of the damage potential of this Terrorblade. And if this Terrorblade constantly gets woven up, as well as gets the Shallow Grave, then he's going to be able to do some serious damage if MiTH can't burst him down. They were close to doing it. They invested everything they had, but it just wasn't enough with the Dazzle on the field.
To be fair, I don't think that Awake could have taken those fights without the BKBs on the Terrorblade as well as the Templar Assassin, and I also think it's kind of a mistake for MiTH to continue wailing on the Terrorblade after he gets the Grave onto him. He was at half HP when the Grave came out from the Dazzle, which is probably the right time to throw it out. But then after the Grave comes out, Lich commits the Chain Frost. It was a nice clumped area to get that Chain Frost off in, but then again, you're setting up Terrorblade for a really easy Sunder.
Alright, so MiTH are going to be pretty shaken up about that last fight. It wasn't the worst possible fight for them, though losing the Tiny is never a good thing. They're going to continue on with their planned strategy of just choking Awake out of all their resources and slowly constricting their lanes, and I mean, so far it has been working out for them. I think the Batrider just needs to get a little bit better initiation, pull the Terrorblade away from his allies. I mean, that's really where Batrider excels, and that's really what didn't happen, is the Dazzle was keeping up with the Terrorblade and was able to land those skills, so need to drag him further away, and I think that could be the difference between killing off a Terrorblade and winning the fight and then taking a tower straight after, or losing the fight or breaking even.
Yeah, I don't recall how the Stampede was used in that last engagement, but if they use the Stampede as well as the Batrider ultimate, it should be fairly easy. We're going to see a fairly large group up coming out from Awake. They might have bumped into the Centaur, but for now, they're not going to find it. The Sentry is going to be dewarded coming out from the Batrider, as both teams are going to be fighting for control over that high ground vision. Tiny and I are continuously pushing out, and this looks very familiar to what we saw just a couple minutes ago. Lakelz continuously farms. He has the Mantis style now completed. I'm not sure if this is going to be the go-ahead for them to continue to go into Awake and potentially look for another fight. I think they're just going to wait until Awake comfortable enough to leave their base, or until Tiny's completely maxed. Right now, there's very little pressure on MiTH, and all the pressure on Awake to perform in the next team fight.
And Tiny with the Manta style is going to be very secure in this top lane in order to just send Illusion Wave after Illusion Wave and chip down at the tier 2 tower. No commitment needed. It is going to be a big smoke up from Awake. However, Batrider in the perfect position. I don't think he realizes that he just blew a smoke, but that's fine because he just blew a smoke anyway. And up towards top, Lakelz is still pushing out with these couple of illusions, even tossing them in to get them in faster. It's just guaranteed chip damage. And Awake, they can't really leave their base because they have to worry about this constant harass up on top. MiTH aren't getting that much done outside of this top lane, to be fair, so it's not really like a huge win. Even mid lane's pushing out, but Awake, they're just not getting anything. And Lakelz is slowly but steadily getting more and more farm, putting more damage onto this tower. And if this status quo is left unchanged, then eventually this Tiny is going to get 6 slotted, and it's a matter of time before Batrider is going to find an opening.
Yeah, I think that's fair right now. The opening's going to be on bottom as they find a lasso onto Toy. With the center ultimate, they're going to hoof stomp double edge. Before the BKB comes out, oh my goodness, Flamebreak gonna come out as well as the Chain Frost. And Templar Assassin had not the time to get that magic immunity off, so she's going to fall. And this is the opening that MiTH has been looking for to actually commit to a high ground push. They might not go for it all together. Right now they're still leaving the IO Tiny up in top, but they have a relocate. If they really need to get into the fight, Tiny can continuously farm up the enemy jungle, as he's been doing for the last couple of minutes. It is going to be a Vladimir's offering purchased by the IO as his next item. Currently the Morbid Mask in the inventory, almost having that completed. In fact, now that he has 600 gold, I think that's enough to straight up purchase it. Lich's next item choice is going to be a Ghost Scepter for himself, which is pretty nice, but I think getting the earlier Vlads would have been nicer. I don't know. Either way, it's going to be a moot point as Aya is going to have that completed, giving a lot of damage to Tiny. And speaking of damage on Tiny, he has a DD, which is by and large the scariest rune you can ever see on a Tiny, which will secure this Roshan incredibly quickly. With Overcharge and the double damage rune, Roshan's just being chunked down.
The Wake are going to scout this one out, potentially with an Eldritch Titan Spirit, although it's not going to be in range. They're going to get a swap back onto Batrider, but can they actually do anything off of this? It doesn't look like it, because Tiny now has a double life, and they're struggling to kill him off once. Now the lasso onto Yo2. He's going to get Graved up, which is actually a bad thing for Wake, because that means a Grave on Avenging Spirit is not a Grave on Terrorblade, and straight up to the top lane, Lakelz and SD go. They're going to annihilate the range Vaxes, then go for melee, smash and grab, and the Awake side don't even have a chance to respond, but by the time they get up there, everything's already destroyed. That was a perfectly executed plan by MiTH. They get a kill on the Vengeful Spirit. Yeah. They pull out Shadow Grave, which ultimately wasn't relevant, but I take Raxus up on top for absolute free. This game is just getting so much worse for Awake. They couldn't even fight there. They literally did not have a fight.
Yeah, they did. The Tiny now is going to be working towards a butterfly and has enough gold to complete that. We now have the Vlads delivered to the IO. The Tiny is incredibly scary for them. They still have the Aegis, so MiTH, if they really wanted to, can now start the slow siege down and bottom. Eventually, Awake are going to be forced to commit at the very least one hero up towards top. And once the fight's 4v5, MiTH are going to be very comfortable in taking it, especially with second life on the Tiny, effectively making the fight 4v6. And at that point, it's hard enough for Awake to win a 5v5 fight, let alone a fight where they're at a numbers disadvantage.
What the hell are you going to do against this Tiny? He has so much freaking armor, and now he has evasion. Awake, they have nothing close to resembling an MKB, and hell, if they slip up for just a second, suddenly this happens. Your tower is going to drop. Lakelz is just tanking everyone because he doesn't give a damn. He has so much durability that he's going to take the tower and then calmly walk back. SD is going to regenerate him up pretty swiftly, and Awake, they can't do anything about this. They have to initiate on a Tiny who has like 4,000 plus effective HP with all of this combined. I would say it's, definitely more than that even. Tiny's just going to keep going. What can Awake do? They have to fight, but they're going to lose melee racks, as that would have dropped in like 5 hits. Now Toy is going to get lassoed back with the Stampede. He is going to get stunned up, but he might be able to pop the BKB. In the meantime, Lakelz fighting up against King A. He's being focused down by the Terrorblade, but he doesn't give a damn. He's just going for Raxes, while the rest of his team is fighting up against everyone else. Toy is going to get beaten down. It looks like he will survive for just a little while longer due to refraction, but is it going to buy the survival? It looks like it will. Yo2 is going to not be as lucky, as both him and Dazzle are going to get cleaved down. Now it's going to be the Terrorblade man fighting up against everyone, but Lakelz, he still has Aegis, so even if he dies once, it doesn't really matter. Zolotic and Toy, they're in so much trouble. Bungcell is going to buy back into this game, but they didn't even bring Tiny to like below a third. He's still at half HP, and he still has the Aegis. He did lose the Io, which means there's no lifesteal, but I don't think he cares. That's going to be bottom set and top set of Raxes, and probably even mid, because Awake, they can't fight this. Tiny.
Nope. Let's see. 1, 2. Shots onto the barracks, and now he focuses on the Toy. Why do you even need to do so? It's going to be 4 shots to bring the barracks down to half, and now he's going to toss Avalanche onto Solotic as well as onto Toy. And this game, if it wasn't already abundantly clear, has been blown wide open by MiTH. That's a triple kill for your Tiny. If Awake come closer, it's just going to make it even worse. Looking for the Ultra is going to be stunned up and might be denied it. Looking for the Rampage, it is going to be a Rampage. Coming out from Lakelz, now Solotic looking for the double Rampage. Oh, the Ancient explodes right before Lakelz is able to secure that last swing of his mighty tree. But really, MiTH looking so strong. The questionable laning choices coming out from Awake, I'm not sure if it lost them the game outright. I think more than anything, it was just their lack of ability to control out MiTH. Once the Blink Dyrus came online, MiTH had complete control over the map.
The Batrider having a 3-0-10 score really just spelled everything out. And, Tiny has 818 gold per minute. That also is a pretty large threat. But that's going to mean that Awake are going to be out of the TIE Championship. It's going to be MiTH Trust to move on, and that's going to be it for this best of one, guys. We do have one more that Grandis and I are going to cover, it seems like, and we're going to be hopefully giving you a time frame that's a little bit more accurate than last time, but it's a LAN. We don't exactly know what's going on. I hope you guys enjoyed the cast. If you did, be sure to hit that follow button. We will be back eventually for the next game from the TIE Championship, so don't go anywhere. Thanks for watching, guys. Yeah, we'll just be right back.